Deitz.
We need to prepare for 10 years down the line. That's what these bills do. Both these bills spend out over 10 years.
President Joe Biden said Michigan is falling behind and the country needs to pass the infrastructure bill immediately and the reconciliation bill as well. He says, don't worry about paying for it. That's all going to be done by raising the taxes on corporations and those who make over $400,000 a year. There were more than 500 protesters camped out on the corner of Michigan Avenue and M59 in Howell, hoping President Biden would get their message that they don't think we can afford many of the things he's pushing in the infrastructure and the reconciliation bill. Joining us now is David Dulio, Oakland University professor of political science. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, Kevin. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's interesting to have the president in Michigan. He clearly thinks this is a place that he wants to get his message out. As you listen to what the president had to say, how do you think he delivered on his effort to try and sell these two packages?
Well, Kevin, I think it's a curious place for him to come and try to make this pitch. And I say that because on the one hand, as you know, Michigan is this incredibly important electoral state at the federal level. But on the other hand, when presidents use this strategy, and it's Joe Biden didn't invent it. Presidents have been taking their case to the public for decades. And in political science, we would call this going public, where the president is going directly to the people, going over the heads of members of Congress, taking his case, as I said, right to the folks. And when we usually see the president do this, he oftentimes goes to a place where he's trying to wrangle some votes from members of Congress. The idea is to go to a place where if the president can convince the public that this is a good idea, they will pressure their either members of the U.S. House of Representatives or members of the U.S. Senate to vote for his agenda. And in Michigan, we don't have that right now. All the Democrats are solidly on board with this, and all the Republicans are solidly against. I would have expected him to go to a different state where maybe there was some waffling by Democrats, or maybe that if there was a gettable Republican, he could go there.
So he should have been in West Virginia and Joe Manchin country, or in Arizona and Kristen Sinema country, trying to get the folks riled up and ringing their phones and shooting them emails saying, hey, we heard the president, we like what he's saying, we want you to get on board with changing your mind and passing this. Or maybe he could go out to Bernie Sanders country, or maybe he was here talking to Rashida Tlaib. I don't know, try and say, look, instead of that $6 trillion you want in the reconciliation bill, maybe you can move that down to 1.5 or 2.2, somewhere where we can get it passed. Maybe that was his strategy, but I don't know. I tend to agree with you. I think his message was in the wrong state.
Well, and the point about Rashida Tlaib is a good one, but he didn't go to Detroit, right? He went to Livingston County, where he, as you mentioned, met with some protesters, which we would expect to see these days, right? But he goes to one of the most Republican counties in the state and is met with opposition, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was interesting because he was at a facility talking about training, and there is a need in Michigan. There's a need everywhere in the country, but there is a strong need for training dollars to get people who don't go to college, or people who do go to college, to learn trade skills, because there aren't enough people doing that, and there's good money to be made, and the idea of letting Michigan know that he's interested in helping in that regard is fine, not bad optics, but the problem is there's so much more to the reconciliation bill than some funding for training, for job training.
Sure, and that's as you say, part of it, right? And it actually harkens back to the 2020 election, and dare I say, the 2016 campaign, where Donald Trump came, as you know, in 2016 and talked about manufacturing. He talked about trade, and 2020, Bernie Sanders came during the primary and talked about trade. Joe Biden came in the general election and talked about manufacturing. Right, so there is this focus on Michigan manufacturing, and the president said as much yesterday, talking about The future of autos in this country is electrification, and those batteries and those components need to be built here in Michigan. So it's going back to, he's revisiting a theme of his campaign with the focus on manufacturing.
He had some specifics on the kinds of money that will come to Michigan in regards to the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, but he really couldn't put a finger on what's going to happen with the reconciliation bill. He did say that he believes that 50% or more reduction in child care costs for most low and middle income families, 44% reduction in the number of Michigan children living in poverty, almost 250,000 more students with access to free school meals, funding for 832,000 students to eat over the summer. He had some sort of big picture ideas of what could happen, but he doesn't know because he doesn't know how much, if any, of that money he's ultimately going to get. But people, whether it's the 1.5 trillion or this 3.5 trillion, people feel like somehow this is going to add to the national debt, that he is not being honest when he says we're going to pay for this entire thing by raising taxes on corporations and raising taxes on those who make over $400,000 a year.
Well, and that's because a lot of Americans have seen this play before, right? They have been told one thing and then seen results that reflect another. And, you know, the other factor is we don't know what's going to end up in this final bill. We don't have legislative text that's finalized because the negotiations are ongoing. And, you know, we don't know what is going to survive either on the spending side or the revenue side if and when a final deal gets made.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, he comes to Michigan and he gives this speech, and it was carried on national television. So I guess the whole country eventually does get his message, and then he zips back to Washington D.C. He was home for dinner. Does he move the needle? Does anyone in D.C. did anyone change their mind? Did Bernie Sanders suddenly think that you know what, we don't need to spend all $6 trillion. We can come down to 1.5, or does Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema say, you know what, we're just gonna let them do this deal. We're gonna vote with the 3.5 million.
Yeah, I really don't think it moves the needle all that much. And frankly, I don't know if anything is going to move the needle enough on the public side to have an impact on the key votes that really matter. And that's Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema in the Senate and a group of progressives in the House. Rashida Tlaib is among those. But she doesn't strike me as somebody who's going to be swayed by one speech in one county in Michigan that she doesn't even represent.
All right, David Dulio, Oakland University, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much.